This episode has very sensitive topics, is for mature audiences only, and contains depictions of various forms of trauma. Viewer discretion advised.
We're only around females. It's impossible not to fall in love with other females and not to play doctor with them and not to do all of those things that kids do because there's no boys to do it with. God, I mean, we'd sit and inspect each other's privates on the Sabbath like we did some crazy stuff. My parents are two neurodivergent humans walking around undiagnosed, thinking that they're perfect, using religion as a veil. There's definitely very little neurodivergent representation in our communities. I'm a little girl and didn't process what really had happened at the time because my mom is so obsessed with modesty, but she didn't keep modesty rules this time around. What she did was she yanked me by my hair, dragging me by my hair all through the house, and then lifted me up by my head, my hair, and threw me down, face down on the bed, and then yanked my pants down for further humiliation, which is not something she did after I had just been violated. And then once she had her fill of beating me, threw me on the ground and told me to go back to sleep. And then I, as an adult, have to go to weddings, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, and I have to see this woman. And I have to pretend like nothing happened. And that stayed in my subconscious for a very, very, very long time. This cult that has lied to me from the moment I exited and got that barcoded stamped on my head.
Hey, my name is Shalise Ansola, and this is Cults to Consciousness, where we discuss leaving high-demand religions or organizations and finding healing and independence through awareness and true individual sovereignty. If you're only listening and you'd like to see our faces, please head on over to YouTube at Cults to Consciousness. You can join in on the conversation there, interact with the post. It does boost the algorithm, shows our guests that you care, makes us feel special too, and it's just good for everybody all around. We love this amazing community that we have built and all the incredible comments that we see on these posts. It means so much to us. So today's guest, she reached out to us when we started releasing our Ultra Orthodox videos with Sarah and with Beatrice, and she's like, I got things to say, and I'm so happy that she did. She was also on Soft White Underbelly. We watched that interview. It was about 2 years ago, 1.9 million views, and we're going to talk about what happened when that actually came out, the backlash of that. We're going to talk about her own story, of course, growing up in the Hasidic community on the East Coast, or the Ultra Orthodox community with Hasidicism in her family, and all the things that came with that. Thank you so much for joining us, Chasya.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's so good to connect with you. We've been chatting it up on Instagram. There's so much to talk about that we already decided from the beginning, instead of splitting it up like we always tend to do. We're going to do 2 episodes. This first episode will be focused on yourself, your childhood, growing up in the community, what it was like being a neurodivergent child, and how they don't really have any sort of support for that, and how that was difficult for you. Also, getting married in an arranged marriage, having a child, and then trying to get out of that community. Second episode, we're going to blow shit up. I'm so excited to hear what you have to say. You're like, I'm going to expose the dark underbelly of this group. I'm going to expose what husbands are doing in the dark corners that the wives don't know about, the underground system they have going, how they're protecting predators. It's going to get really, really juicy and serious and dark. And I'm looking forward to hearing everything you have to say. So let's kick it off with this first episode. Give everyone an idea of where you were from. I know you were born in California, where your family essentially grew up, how many kids are in your family, and then we'll get into the rules and restrictions.
First, I was born in California, Los Angeles. My dad worked as a rabbi in one of the yeshivas over there. And when you work and learn as a rabbi, you receive a stipend. He made his money that way. Unfortunately, the beautiful weather wasn't enough to keep them. My mom could not handle the deviance, the sexuality, the billboards, the beautiful women, and being that, the valley is, where porn land is, my mom just, she couldn't handle it. She can't She's the kind of woman, like, she wouldn't let my brothers even go to the mall due to Victoria's Secret posters or Abercrombie and Fitch posters. She wouldn't want her sons to even look at a poster of a woman
Not
disrobed in
covered
any
up.
way. Exactly. We had to move, sadly for me, because I have such a love for California, for the people there. And we'll get back to that. So we moved to Flatbush, Brooklyn. We moved to a 2-family home. There was 7 kids at the time. There was 2 bedrooms for the kids and my parents' bedroom. It was very, very claustrophobic. We had no choice. We had to move. And Lakewood was up and coming. Rabbi Cutler had started BMG, which is a famous yeshiva in Lakewood. And a lot of people started to congregate to Lakewood. And at that time, my parents found a beautiful home with 7 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms for practically nothing. So that was a much better fit with a backyard, a driveway. We were told that it was the safest place we could move to. And straight up, the first night we moved there, we think we don't have to lock up our bikes. Our bikes get stolen. We have no idea that the people hate seeing us colonialize their little vacation town. Lakewood used to be a vacation resort town. And I remember one of the first few nights that we were there, just hearing glass shattering. And we lived behind a railroad. And unfortunately, the secular people would go on the railroad and pick up all the rocks, and they would pelt them at our glass windows. So it was actually a pretty traumatic start to Lakewood. It wasn't what they had promised us. Even as a young child, if I walked down the street, and if there would be secular people, I got punched in the face even by one because they hated us so much.
What?
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah, yeah. That was terrifying.
That probably further cemented the idea, us versus them, they're out to get you, don't be of the world because they're crazy and they're trying to hurt you, all of that.
My dad got mugged so bad on the Sabbath. He got grabbed by a guy and he said, "Where's your wallet?" And it's the Sabbath and we don't carry money. We don't carry anything. My dad said, "I don't have my wallet." So he got so mad at my father, he started punching him to a living pulp.
Oh,
And that didn't cure my dad's racism one bit. It made it even worse. My poor dad's nose was broken. He had to be rushed to the hospital. And you can see in his nose that memory of what he went through. So Lakewood wasn't as safe as we thought it was. And it's still not a safe place. The non-Jews despise us for coming there and taking over. And that's what we did. I heard a great saying, they call it Brooklyn to Lakewood shuffle. And it's true because housing is cheaper, the houses are bigger, and people get sick of looking for parking. And you have driveways, you have backyards, you have beautiful parks. You have these very insular, big neighborhoods. They're not gated, but there's only Jews that live in these neighborhoods. So anybody who walks in there that doesn't look Jewish, the alarm bells will go off. And if you're not, part of a cleaning service, a nanny, or somebody who's there to work on something, they're going to immediately look at you with suspicion. And, just to mess with them, I would, on the Sabbath, because I know who I am. If it's summertime, I'm certainly not dressing in the black garb, and I'd walk my dog in whatever I felt like I wanted to wear. And it would just be kind of funny just to walk through. I call them the ghettos of Warsaw, but a little bit nicer, because they have bathrooms and they have fully furnished homes. But I kind of imagine like this is what the ghettos of Warsaw were like, because all the neighborhoods in Lakewood are very insular, and they all look the same. Everybody has minivans, or a Jew canoe, as we call it. I even accidentally once walked into somebody's house that was identical to somebody else's house. Their doors were unlocked. I walk in and I'm like, this furniture doesn't look familiar at all. And I quickly realized that I was a block Ford from a different house. And I just walked in. Thank goodness nobody came out to greet me. I quickly exited the house, giggled to myself, and walked around the block. And they had identical minivans. So in my defense, they looked exactly the same. So I made that mistake. But Lakewood is just neighborhoods and neighborhoods of extremely insular Jewish communities, and the Hasidics have come to take over as well. You're going to move into a neighborhood and it's going to be completely diverse. And by the time you move out, there's going to be 3 synagogues. There's going to be a boys' yeshiva. There's going to be no peace and quiet. And basically, you need, I believe 10 people to pray. I don't know if it's 10 or 12. Luckily, I forgot a lot of the laws and the rules. And I'm grateful that I forgot it, because this stuff was always punched into me. So seeing that my brain has disassociated a little bit and fragmented from it shows me that I'm healing. And I'm very happy about that.
Yeah.
But in order to pray, men, I believe, need 10 people. It's called a minyan. And I believe they need 10 people over the age of 13 to have that amount of people in order to be able to pray.
Okay.
You go and you move into a diverse neighborhood and it's going to get taken over within a couple of years. All of a sudden, you're going to hear yeshiva bells ring for when it's time for recess. You're not going to have any peace and quiet.
Let's talk about your childhood then. What did that look like? You are the middle child of the family, right?
I am number 4 out of 8. So I have middle child syndrome to the fullest. The older kids pushed everything onto me, and I took it upon myself to protect my younger siblings because I don't want them to go through what I went through. So I would be very protective over my siblings. I would even break school rules because the school that I went to was so huge. There's, I believe now, about 10 parallel classes for each grade. And when there would be fire alarms, I would break the rule and go look for my 2 little sisters to make sure they were safe. I didn't care if I got into trouble because I was always getting into trouble that I almost became numb to it. Would my heart still pound when I would hear over the intercom that Chasya come to the office, Chasya come to the office? Of course my heart would pound, but it was part of life. I was somebody that unintentionally would blurt things out, not to be cruel, not to be evil, but when you're neurodivergent, you blurt things out. And you don't do it on purpose. You get a brain fart and you just blurt things out. They didn't understand that. So they once asked a question about Saul, I believe. It was Saul who went to the well and all the women came to greet him. And the teacher said, "Why did all the women come to greet him?" And I blurted out, "Well, because they must probably all had a crush on him." And one of Rabbi Cutler's descendants, who I was actually really good friends with her, she was a great girl, gasped and said, "Chasya, don't say that." And the teacher didn't even hear what I said. But because all the other girls gasped and giggled because I dared say the word crush, I got kicked out. And I already knew the teacher didn't hear a word I said, but I got confronted in the hallway while everyone's walking about. "What did you say?" And I got a verbal beating for that. And I'm sure my parents got a phone call as well. And that would happen all the time. I'm a little ashamed to admit this, but I even would have games with girls where we would write notes to each other and we would have English names. I was Grace, my best friend was Ashley, and we would write these notes about how we wanted to go to public school so bad and have boyfriends and how much we wanted to, I can draw, not very well, but I would make all these pictures and someone snitched on us. And they went into the lockers and they found this big bag of notes that me and 2 other girls, we were always passing to each other. But I got into the most trouble because I was drawing pretty vivid pictures of boys and girls kissing and castles and princes and princesses. I was always accused that I lived in a fairy tale world. And I did. I did. I wanted that life of romance, that life of love, that life of being fashionable, to be able to express myself.
I want to dive into that more because I want people who aren't familiar with Ultra Orthodox to understand why that was such a fantasy for you and why it was so wrong, for, according to them, for you to be drawing these pictures and having those dreams for yourself.
Because from the moment we're 4 or 5 years old, we're already separated from boys. We joke, we call our high school lesbian high. And I don't want to jump, but I found it fascinating that both Sarah and Beatrice raised us not knowing what we identify as because we're only around females. It's impossible not to fall in love with other females and not to play doctor with them and not to do all of those things that kids do because there's no boys to do it with. So we do it with the girls. We did some crazy doctor playing. God, I mean, we'd sit and inspect each other's privates on the Sabbath. Like, we did some crazy stuff that we thought was normal because there was no education. We didn't know anything. We didn't know better. We just were curious. We were so curious about each other because we were so insular and so, I don't like to use the word protected. Shelter, exactly.
Yeah.
My parents thought that they were protecting us. They were only inadvertently weakening us, unfortunately. It wasn't protection. We were ignorant. We were very, very ignorant. We didn't know.
Let's talk about what your school situation was like. Do you feel like you received a great education looking back on it? I know it's kind of hard to know for sure, but do you feel like you were getting the education that you wanted?
I mean, I think it's pretty cool that I can read Hebrew and I can read Rashi and I can write it and then understand it. But anything that I learned in school, did I need for my current day and age? Absolutely not. The only thing maybe that we learned in school that has helped me is the good manners, the good morals, and the good ethics that they impart onto us. I believe those things have nothing to do with religion. I believe that if you're a good person because you're afraid to go to hell, you're not a good person. You should naturally want to be a good person. And also they instilled a lot of fear in us. And I don't want to be a God-fearing human. I want to be a God-loving human.
Yeah.
You know, like I noticed that a lot about Christians is that they love Jesus. And they always talk about how much Jesus loves you. With us, like we're learning at a very young age that if you need to give up your life, you have to die to sanctify God's name instead of bowing to an idol. And I remember asking, well, what if they wouldn't kill us, but they would physically force us to bow? Would I have to kill myself then? Like they're talking about death and stoning and that we're going to have shortened lives and that whippings and burning and literally terrorizing us children, absolutely terrorizing us from very young ages.
Yeah, all of that's terrifying for a young child, the imagery, and it's very real, right? Especially because at a young age, I think up until 7 or 8, a kid is actually living in imagination land. They don't really understand what's reality, what's play, what's imaginary. And so when you put those images into a child's mind, that's really scary for them to take in and understand or even try to understand. There was a very visceral scene that you painted in your Soft White Underbelly interview about these chickens, the bloody scene of the chickens. Can you explain that?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so, and I wanted to add some more into that because everybody freaked out that I made a mistake. I confused Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Now, in our culture, Rosh Hashanah lead up to Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah is not a joyful new year for us. We are busy preparing for the whole month. The horn is being blown. And Rosh Hashanah is 10 days away from Yom Kippur. So I had confused when we slaughter the chickens. And yes, I'm human. I made a mistake. It's not a Rosh Hashanah. It's before Yom Kippur. And we would go when we lived in Brooklyn. It happens in Lakewood too. My poor daughter, oh, I regret it so much. I took her to where it was happening and she sobbed like a baby because she raises chickens. She loves chickens. She doesn't like to even eat meat. So she's such a gentle, amazing soul. When she saw all the dead chickens in the crates, she wailed. And but let's get back to me. So there's basically the boys have male chickens that get the boys and the girls that get separated. And what's so fascinating, if there's a woman who's pregnant with twins, two chickens get held, both a male and a female, just in case one of the unborn children is a boy. Even a pregnant woman, her fetuses have to pay and have to sacrifice these animals for these imaginary sins for the fetus. So what I witnessed was seeing the chickens, and what would happen is they would raise these poor chickens up by their wings, and they go around in a circle 3 times. Za Khalifasi, Za Timurasi, and they're basically saying this chant. And after they say that chant, I saw this with my own 2 eyes. They have it's called a shochet, which is a slaughterer. And we're told that the slaughterer does not cause any pain to the animals. I want to tell you all that's a lie. I saw Jewish slaughter. They sling those cows up by the 2 legs. Those cows are terrified. They slice their necks open. They are convulsing. They reach inside their necks and yank something out and throw it to the side. Do not believe those lies. I am very, very against animal cruelty, and those slaughterers are not causing painless. If you want to do painless slaughter, put a bullet in their brain. It's a lie. So what I saw was they basically slit the chicken, their neck. The blood comes shooting out, and the chicken starts going around in circles violently. And this is what, as a little girl, I'm seeing. It's burnt into my head that these innocent chickens who are so intelligent. I follow so many chicken families on Instagram. I see how intelligent they are, that they have to die for our sins. These terrified, innocent chickens. And we're told that the chickens go to charity to the poor people. But I was also told by animal activists that it's BS, that they're all thrown into black garbage bags and tossed into the garbage. And I trust the animal activists way more than I trust this cult that has lied to me from the moment I exited and got that barcoded stamped on my head. I trust those animal advocates way, way more, because religion will lie, and they'll even say it's okay to lie. The word is litoelet. If it's to help with something, you're allowed to lie. So people will always use these things to their advantage.
Yeah. And then how are you supposed to decipher what's truth and what's not if you're allowed to lie, if it's part of the doctrine that you can lie if it's for a purpose?
Oh, my mother's favorite saying is, telling the truth, we do. But saying everything, we don't have to.
Lying by omission.
Lie by omission, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, she literally would infuse that into my soul. I have trust issues.
What was your life like at home with your parents, with your siblings? What was the environment like?
Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. My mother, whom is a victim herself, could not handle the constant pregnancies. She thought that this was a commandment. She thought this is a gift from God. She's recreating all of the children that Hitler murdered. But my mom was pregnant and hormonal constantly. I never remembered her not being pregnant. And some of my most horrifying memories are of her and her violence, and her telling my father to be violent towards us. And when he was violent, he would leave marks. He didn't know his own strength, I believe. And he was terrifying. I mean, my father could go from being super gentle and quiet, and if you said something that upset him, he would pound the table so hard or kick a chair so hard, it would go flying across the hallway. That's how hard his rage would come out. It would be this dichotomy, this yin and yang of this very gentle, kind man to I don't know if it's narcissistic rage. I don't know if it's autistic rage. I don't know. I can't diagnose him. He's not the type that would ever go and get a diagnosis. And I'm not able to diagnose him because I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a social worker. My mother, I remember it was the Sabbath, and on the Sabbath you're supposed to rest, and they were sleeping. And don't have a bunch of kids and expect us not to make noise. And I remember my mother got woken up, and she came out of the room, and she went to my oldest brother, and she smacked him on the head so hard that his glasses flew off and shattered. And all of us scrambled and hid in our rooms so that we wouldn't be next. It would be a thing where, the older kids would be like, mommy is furious, quickly go hide. And we'd go hide because we knew that if you were in the pathway of her rage, whether you weren't the person who caused it, she's going to come after anybody who's within her diameter, Is that the right word? Perimeter, excuse me. Yes. There was a lot of beatings, a lot of screaming. Oh, I remember telling my mom, because I have severe sensory issues with food, that I didn't like dinner. And she would make me stand in the corner of the kitchen while everybody would eat, and I'd be sobbing in the corner. And she'd just make me stand in a corner. I wouldn't even be allowed to ask for a tissue while my snot would just be pouring out onto the floor. And then she'd look at the snot on the floor and be like, "You're disgusting." Get mad at me that my snot and my tears, because I have no tissue to wipe it. She said, "If you open your mouth, I'll beat you. I'll patch you," is the word that she would use, which is Yiddish for hit. I said I didn't like I have severe sensory issues with food, and I know my mother worked her tuchus off, which means butt. We weren't allowed to say any of these words. And I said, I didn't like this. And she raised a sizzling spatula at me, and she said, "If you say it again, I'm going to hit you with this." And I remember just looking up at this sizzling oil spatula, and I knew she would.
That's so much to take on as a child. I can't imagine being in that situation.
You have no idea.
Yeah, that's so much.
Luckily, I had the reverse reaction to that. I maybe was violent very few times, and the reasons I was violent were for very, very good reasons. One was when we moved to Lakewood. It was my first time I got into trouble. I didn't know anybody, and I am a zealot for special needs people. And two kids were bullying a Down syndrome kid, and I roared up to them. And I meant to pull the girl's hair, and unfortunately, when I pulled her hair, I yanked her earring out, and I hurt her. And she started to cry, and I told her, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that." But she didn't care. They ran and they told on me, and I got into big trouble. I should have gotten praised. They should have gotten into trouble for bullying her.
Mm-hmm.
But I was the one that got into trouble for protecting her. But I would never take it back.
Yeah.
If I see anyone's special needs, I'm going to automatically be drawn to them and be protective over them. I'm always going to get the dog on death row. I'm always going to rescue the dog that nobody wants. Even the current dog that I have, I even said, I don't think that we could take her. She's too in too deep. But my daughter cried, and her tears control me. And I know that's not the best thing in the world, but I said, okay, we'll give it a try. Thank God she cried, because I couldn't live without my current dog right now. She's the reason I'm alive, my dog.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know something that you wanted to talk about when you reached out to me was how these communities are not set up to help special needs kids or neurodivergent kids. Do you want to talk more on that? Expand on that?
Yes, absolutely. When I realized that my own child was displaying neurodivergent tendencies, she was told by someone, "Your mom thinks that you're retarded."
Oh my gosh.
They view neurodivergent people as pity cases. They call them nebuch cases, instead of realizing that our brain scans are just different from allistic brains. We're not retarded in the slightest bit. If anything, 70% of neurodivergent people have higher IQs than allistics. It's just that, sadly, the very low functioning neurodivergent people, they do need care into adulthood. So they don't want that stigma on their children. So their children go throughout life thinking that they're defective fish instead of soaring doves. I never knew why I had all these hangups and issues and why my sisters would make fun of me oh, Chasya is going to need at least 2 to 3 hours to get ready. And that's my perfectionism, which is a comorbidity of ADHD. Perfectionism is an absolute disability because it's a rat race that leads you nowhere. And it's something that I can't control. I always want everything to be perfect, not just me, but, my surroundings and people. And perfectionism it's impossible. We were told only God is perfect. We're all flawed, Yeah, there's a lot of, sadly, so many children that are not getting treated. They're getting beat instead of saying, okay, my kid doesn't want to eat. She can't handle certain materials. She freaks out if something's too tight or a label is scratching her. My kid will only eat 3 foods, and it doesn't dawn on them, hey, maybe there's something going on here. Because 1 in 40 adults are walking around undiagnosed. So it starts with the adults, and the adults are masking. The children learn to mask, and masking is death. What happens is once you start to mask for too long, you start to become extremely dysregulated.
Yeah.
And then the burnout kicks in. And once the burnout kicks in, you can't mask anymore. And once you can't mask anymore, everybody's in trouble.
Do you think it's possible that your mom may have had some neurodivergence and that's why she was so overstimulated?
Absolutely. My mom displays a lot of ADHD traits. And my father displays a lot of autistic traits. He's always stimming with his beard. Always. Always. My dad is extremely anxious when driving, and I never understood why. And I'm also very anxious when driving, and I found out it's because I have no depth perception. That's probably my father doesn't either. So my parents are 2 neurodivergent humans walking around undiagnosed, thinking that they're perfect, and using religion as a veil to hide their imperfections and the things that they need to work on.
Yeah. Within these neurodivergence or with the special needs kids, do they have any sort of awareness of actual diagnoses? Because I know that they are so shielded from secular education. I'm wondering how much they actually are aware exists. And if so, or if they don't know about these diagnoses, do they blame it on unworthiness or some sort of spiritual thing to where just pray more or just do this more?
For sure. There's definitely very little neurodivergent representation in our communities. What I'm trying to say is that there aren't a lot of social workers and therapists that are neurodivergent themselves. So when you're analytic, you're not going to notice tics. You're not going to notice stimming. You're not going to notice little things that I immediately can pick up on other people instantly. So we have zero representation, which is why I feel like sometimes it's up to me to get my booty into school and become a social worker so that there can be some sort of neurodivergent representation. And I really want to work for CPS so that when I walk into these Jewish homes and they start talking in Yiddish and in Hebrew, they don't know that I understand what the hell they're saying. And then I can report to the workers what's really going on.
Yeah. Ooh, that would be dangerous for them, of course, as far as not being able to get away with anything.
It's about protecting the kids. I don't give excuse my language, two shits about what the adults feel. I'm here for the voiceless and for the hopeless and for the helpless.
Yeah. Can we talk more about ways in which you felt like as a child or a young teen, you were helpless and hopeless and voiceless?
Absolutely. I would say the first thing that most probably caused tremendous PTSD was we lived in a 2-family house, and I would always go downstairs to play with the daughter. And mind you, till this day, after I tell you this story, till this day, when we have events, the parents of this person who violated me so terribly comes to all of my family events and is welcome and wants to come and hug me. And my own doctor told me, do not go to family events anymore. Like, your mental health comes before what your family wants to pretend, like, that the whole family is there and that we all have it together. And I really appreciated her for telling me that, because she happens to be a religious Jewish doctor. So back to that, I would always play downstairs because it was just more fun down there. Also, my mom had this weird thing that she would not allow us to chew gum. And I loved gum. I wasn't allowed to drink grape juice unless it was the Sabbath. Like, getting a cup of grape juice was like the most exciting thing for me. We were so poor that we would have to cut up pickles, and we can only have a few slices of the pickles. So when we'd be at the neighbors and they pull out a huge thing of Flam sour pickles and I can have a big one, these things were so exciting to me because I didn't have them. Sadly, me and my neighbor, we were playing, and one of the teen boys came downstairs and he decided he was going to have a little fun with us. And, they have those washing machine and dryers with those sliding doors that you open, but you can close them from the inside. And he got us we climbed on top of the washing machine and dryer. And I'm not going to get into full detail because I don't want to cry, but we were butt naked. And he was, I don't know if you know what shmatas are, but a shmata is a rag. And he was inserting them in our privates and giggling, amongst other things. And we just stood there and took it. And all of a sudden, boom, the doors roar open. Mrs. O lets out the biggest scream. We jump. She slaps her daughter, not her son, slaps her daughter, who immediately starts crying. She chases her son away, and she tells me, you better get upstairs to your house immediately. I'm a little girl and didn't process what really had happened at the time. I'm a little girl, I go to sleep, and that night, in the middle of my sleep, I am yanked by my hair. I remember this so vividly, and I'll tell you why. Because my mom is so obsessed with modesty, but she didn't keep modesty rules this time around. What she did was she yanked me by my hair and she dragged me. We had like a front room, and her room was all the way in the back. And I don't know if you know anything about Brooklyn homes. They have these like really long hallways. So she yanked me just by my hair, literally just dragging me by my hair all through the house. And then lifted me up by my head, my hair, and threw me down, face down on the bed, and then yanked my pants down for further humiliation, which is not something she did. She wouldn't expose our privates, but she did to me after I had just been violated. My privates had just been exposed and violated, as she began to beat the living shit out of my butt, my bare butt. And I personally think that that is assault on a minor. It is a sexual assault because, Shalise, if I randomly walked up to you and pulled down your skirt and started beating you on your butt, that would be a violation. That's your privates. That's something I can't do to you as an adult. A prison guard can't do it to a prisoner, but why can we do it to children? And she beated me over and over again for being immodest. And then once she had her fill of beating me, threw me on the ground and told me to go back to sleep. And then I, as an adult, have to go to weddings, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, anything, upsharons. Everything's a celebration in our culture. And I have to see this woman, and I have to pretend like nothing happened. And that stayed in my subconscious for a very, very, very long time. And I'm so thankful I went to therapy, because I never understood what caused me to become so hypersexualized at such a young age. That was the reason. And now, being hypersexualized doesn't mean you have a lot of sex. It can also mean that you act in a sexual way, or you give off sexual energy. Because I am a little afraid of men. So I have like I always thought it was the mother wound, but maybe I am gay also. I have always been attracted to female energy. I have always been attracted to that safe feeling, that motherly energy, always, my whole life. I've never been jealous of beautiful women. If anything, when I see a beautiful woman, I want to get close to her. I want to admire her. I want to idolize her. I'm ultra femme myself, and sorry to jump forward, I even explored the lady pool and met the most wonderful woman. Wonderful. I mean, if she watches this, I just want her to see that I'm wearing it. I don't ever take this off. She got me this Tiffany's necklace with this heart.
Oh.
Such, like, I am the most hopeless romantic. Like, when I would tell my mom I wanted to go shopping for the Sabbath, because Wednesday night and Thursday, we would go to 2 different stores to get all of the foods for the Sabbath. And the reason I wanted to go shopping was I wanted to go to ShopRite, and I wanted to get the Silhouette Desire romance novels, because you can't do anything on the Sabbath. You basically just sit around and twiddle your thumbs until you can do things. And what I would do is I'd read. And I would read these juicy romance novels and just dream about that day that it would be me. So when I say this woman is the most hopeless romantic, I mean, if I didn't feel well, if I couldn't eat, because on soft white underbelly, I was 97 pounds. I was so emaciated. I was suffering from severe mold exposure. I was suffering from a couple of other things that I don't feel comfortable talking about yet. I was getting off of some very, very strong medications that had been 6 months post that. So I lost also a ton of weight from that. And now I'm standing in front of you 25 pounds healthier and menstruating healthily now. And that's a big victory for me, because I was told that was why I can never conceive and even have a baby, because as a result of all of the trauma, I started to develop a lot of different sicknesses. A lot.
Well, there's so much that I just wanted to comment on. First, thank you for sharing that experience with us. I know it's so difficult to talk about, and I appreciate you being vulnerable, and that never should have happened to you, not to mention that you should be blamed for that. It hurts my soul every time I hear these stories and these women come on this podcast and they talk about how they were assaulted or abused and then blamed. And it just adds this unnecessary level of shame that is so heartbreaking, that you had to take on the burden of the assault and also the shame and the guilt for doing something that you didn't do. You didn't do anything wrong.
Yes. You're right. I was a victim and got re-victimized by someone who was supposed to protect me.
Yeah.
I'm okay, sweetie. She's my therapy dog, so she
Yeah.
can sense when my anxiety and my heart starts to beat fast. It's okay. Thank you. Thank you, sweetheart. This is why we say dog is God backwards, because, she can sense immediately when I'm emotional, afraid, anxious, and she's there to protect me.
Yeah.
So cool.
That's
I'm
so
okay.
sweet. That's why I have Oscar on my lap. You can't see him, but he's laying down. He's my little emotional support dog too.
It's weird. I never cried in any of my other interviews, but because I think
that's
you're a
okay.
female, and it's like, you understand, it's heartbreaking. And I know how so many other people have received the same exact treatment.
Yeah.
And they don't deserve that. Instead of being protected, they were demonized. Even I remember in 8th grade, I told my mom that I was scared because some guy in a car was following me. And she's like, well, what were you wearing?
Oh,
Not, should we call the police? Should we, are you safe? What were you wearing? Everything. It's your fault.
well, and the modesty rules are so strict already, right? I mean, do you want to explain to people who aren't familiar what you were required to wear from a young age?
At the age of 3, and I don't know if this ties in because when Rebecca got married, she was 3, so they take it upon that modesty should start at 3.
I need a little bit of clarification because I'm not familiar. Who's Rebecca?
She's part of the matriarchs. There's 4 matriarchs and 3 patriarchs. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. are the three patriarchs, and the four matriarchs are Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. So Rebecca she came to bring water to feed Isaac's. And I'm sure if I'm wrong, all the religious people are going to correct me in the comments, and they can. And I'd appreciate that because, like I said, my brain has fragmented and I'm not mad about it at all. So because she came and then he wanted to marry her and then he got tricked by her father. He wanted to marry Rebecca, but he gave her Leah instead. There's just so much to this story, but because she was 3, they take on the stringencies at 3 years old. So at 3 years old, suddenly I can't wear my beautiful, cute, frilly socks, and I have to wear long sleeves. Collarbone needs to be covered. And I remember like looking at pictures of me just horrified. I'm in this little Care Bear nightgown and I have black tights on and clear jellies. I'm like, oh my God, how was I walking around like this? But anytime my mom wasn't around, I'd be folding down my socks so that at least, I can like look like the other little girls. Because yes, do I like not fitting in? Of course, I like to be my own person and my own human being. But at the same time, like as a 3-year-old, you don't have a sense of self yet. You want to be like everybody else. You don't want to be like the religious, the ultra religious one. You want to be like the other kids. And because my dad was a rabbi, we would be around not as stringent Jews, but still extremely religious. But we were always 10 times more religious than the people around us. And I didn't want to be. I wanted to be like them. I didn't want to be like what we were. Who wants to be restricted? If you feel restricted, you're not going to feel love for anything.
That's such an early age. It's just, first of all, I didn't know about that story, and that makes me want to throw up. Second of all, 3 years old, I understand some people will say, well, it's so by the time they grow up, they're used to the modesty. Or is it because we're sexualizing 3-year-olds?
It can be both because predators are everywhere. It doesn't matter what religion you're in, even if you're an atheist, predators are mentally sick individuals. And they have a split when something happens to them. And instead, when their house, I'm saying this in a parable form, when their house gets burned down, instead of rebuilding other people's homes because they know what it feels like to get their house burned down, they burn everybody else's house down too. And they have an unnatural urge, and the urge doesn't go away. I was told a story about a man in Israel who was in jail for touching his daughters, and he begged them. He said, don't release me because all I'm going to do is go right back and do it again. Like he admitted it and begged them not to let him out of jail. It's a sickness and there's no cure. Besides for maybe a lobotomy or the electric chair.
I know we're going to get deeper into this topic in the next episode, so I won't dive too much into it now. Let's talk about your teenage years and what it was like growing up and having these crushes and knowing that you're about to be in an arranged marriage.
I would say like 7th, 8th grade. Luckily, an amazing girl joined my school, and we were like 2 peas in a pod, and I finally found like my partner in crime. Because of her is the only reason I got through the last 2 years of elementary school. I know you guys have middle school, but we have grade primary till 8th grade. We don't have middle school, and then you go into high school. So thank God for her because she was my comfort. Her parents welcomed me into their home. But I was already hiding out in the bathroom. I had no interest in class. I had no interest. I couldn't focus anyways. I had horrible teachers. When you have ADHD, if you don't have a good teacher, you can't focus. You're going to get distracted immediately. So I would be hiding out in the bathroom, and I was like already going to the trailers where they had the tutors, and they thought that I was pretending, but I have dyscalculia, which is basically dyslexia with numbers. But at the time, I didn't know that. And I would always fail math. I couldn't put the numbers together. I failed chemistry. So when you're in 8th grade, that's like the big grade. That's when we all decide. There were 3 high schools in Lakewood, and we all decide which high school we're going to, and you know who your crew is going to be. And for me, when they'd say, which high school are you going to? I couldn't answer because I wasn't accepted to any high schools. In the beginning, I was immediately accepted to the most religious high school in Lakewood. If you're from Lakewood, you'll know which one it is. I'll give the initials, BS. And I was accepted immediately on account of my parents' heritage, because Jewish heritage is a huge thing. And my mother stems from a tremendous rabbinical dynasty. The Megala Amukos, the Tosos. My mother, her heritage is pristine. That is a big deal in our circles, what your heritage is. And immediately my father, people from Israel call my father when they have a question about a law, because my father's so well learned that he'll know the answer. It's called like a posek, where he can tell you what the law is, or say like how to deal with a situation where they're not sure if they're breaking the law, and he would be able to guide the person on how to handle a situation. So I got immediately accepted, and other parents in the community took it upon themselves to call the school and say, are you aware that Chasya wears skirts that are too long, that touch the ground, and that Chasya, she wears shirts that she keeps her top button opened? Are you aware that Chasya hangs out by the Lakewood Lake? Oh no, these are the biggest crimes that I committed at that time. And they immediately rescinded my invitation and disaccepted me. And my parents weren't going to let that fly. Instead of them saying, okay, Chasya doesn't fit in, let's find her a place where she's welcome, they said, you can't just not accept her. You accepted her. You can't. They brought other rabbis in, and they were forced to accept me. And I already knew they didn't want me there. It was, their hands were tied. And the way that principal would glare at me, oh, he terrified me. He terrified me. And that's when my eating disorder started. I just stopped eating. I was in such fear to go to school. So I was absolutely terrified, because I could just like feel the energy. And when you're neurodivergent, you're an energy feeler. You can just feel the daggers on you. And because like all the kids knew that I wasn't accepted, they didn't want to be friends with me, because they didn't want to be associated with me and also get a bad name. And I'm still not sure what the bad name was, because I was sinless and pure.
Do you want to talk more about the eating disorders and how you feel it's common in these communities?
Absolutely. When you have absolutely no control in your life, you are going to figure out a way to find some semblance of control. And for me, that became denying myself food. That was the only means of control that I had at that time. When it started to become noticeable and other people started to notice it, my parents didn't even care. But when other people started to see and started to mention that I looked skeletal and sickly, I was actually taken to one of the top eating disorder doctors, and I believe he's, I think is Dying to Be Thin is the name of his book. You can Google the name of the author. He's one of the top. And they took me to see him, and he urged them to change my location. And luckily they listened. I got shipped off to Memphis, and Memphis was just the biggest culture shock ever. First of all, the South is a little two-faced in the sense that they're going to be nice to your face, but they're going to definitely stick a dagger in your back when you turn around. And I had no idea that Memphis is also super anti-Semitic. When we'd be walking to shul, which is synagogue, we'd be people would throw beer bottles and glass bottles at us while we would be from their cars.
What?
Yeah. Memphis is extremely anti-Semitic as well, but it has a beautiful Jewish community, and the local Jews are wonderful, wonderful people, and they don't take things to extremes, and they take hospitality very, very importantly. So I do have good memories at the locals, but I was in a boarding school. So I was in a boarding house, and the girls that I was with were all very problematic people. And I'm just this very gentle, innocent girl from Lakewood coming into a place where all these girls have already had sex. They're not virgins. Some of them are completely violent and will punch you in the face if you say the wrong thing to them. I again was in fear. And this was the first time that I didn't understand also like why the girls were making up rumors about me that weren't true. They were saying that like I'd be on the swings and then I would be spraying my legs and I was like, flashing the boys. It's not true. I mean, I can look back at all the pictures back then. All the rage was long denim skirts. I mean, that's all. We had to cover our knees still in that school. We all wore long, skirts, but in Lakewood, you couldn't wear denim even. You couldn't have back pockets. You couldn't have a zipper. You couldn't have a fly. Like all those things were not allowed, but you could have that. You could have like a little slit in your skirt, things like that you couldn't have in Lakewood. Memphis was brutal. I found out that the underground yearbook that our dorm made was dedicated to me.
What do you mean?
Oh my gosh. One of the I can dig it up for you and show it to you if you want for maybe the next one. The last picture in the yearbook said, to be blonde and plastic. And I found out they were referring to me.
What?
Yeah, even though I'm naturally now a brunette, when I was younger, I had very light hair. So people considered me dirty blonde. They had so much hatred for me and so much jealousy because we learn there's this saying in Hebrew, kina brings sinna, which means jealousy brings hatred. And it's a fact. When someone is jealous of you, they're going to end up hating you. But I was very, very blessed. I had a wonderful roommate. Her name was Sarah too. Shout out to Sarah Smith. I love you and thank you for protecting me and thank you for being my friend when I had nobody. I love you, Sarah. I will never forget her. She was just so loving and so amazing and so safe. And we would be up all night just talking and God, I loved her so much. And then when she graduated, I was in 10th grade. And when I came back for 10th grade, I had already gone to Israel for a tour of Israel. It was called the Israel Experience. And I got my belly pierced. I got a bunch of piercings everywhere. I was so excited to have freedom. And when I came back for 10th grade, what am I, 15 then? 15? Yeah, 15. So I'm like flossing my belly ring and, so proud. I had my cartilage pierced. Like I'm starting to get to self-express. And they all were like, that was already like outrageous for the Memphis people. Like, oh my God, like what's going on with her? And Memphis I wasn't a good fit for that school anymore. And I went to Israel. I went to Israel early. And I actually even also went to school early. And that's why I got left back a grade because I was extremely ahead. I don't like to call myself intelligent. I think that's egotistical because I'm not intelligent. I'm a student of life, always. But my mom put me in school early because I was advanced intellectually. But there were certain parts of me due to my neurodivergence that I was behind. So I got first put in early and then I got left back. So it was interesting when it came to grades and age because I was like a cusp. I believe there's in Jewish schools, they have like a sign off at like a certain month and then they'll put you in a different grade. So then I went to Israel. And then when I went to Israel, oh my God, that was just insanity. I was put into a school, like a military type school for the first year where if I did something wrong, I remember not being allowed to leave my dorm for a full month.
What?
A month. I was locked in a dorm. Yeah. Straight up jail. And listen, I love one of the principals from there. Like, but she knows it's true. She knows that they were not fitted to take care of all of us problematic girls. And all the girls that came in were either had been to like places like Provo in Utah or been to like, yeah.
Sorry, I laughed because that's where I'm from, and it just is like a funny little crossover.
There you go. You see, the world is smaller than we thought.
Yeah.
Some of these poor girls had lived in the wilderness for months, learning how to survive out in forest as a form of punishment. And those girls have never healed. I know them now at my age. They can never heal from stuff like that. You don't do that to kids. Our frontal lobes aren't developed. You don't do that to young teens. So the first year was pretty hardcore, but I still figured out, I'd be like, I was babysitting my own siblings since I was about 6, 7 years old. I could change a diaper at 5. I would babysit as a means to make money in Israel because you need money when you're in Israel. My parents are poor. So I was getting a 50 shekel allowance a month, which is about maybe $25 a month to survive on. So I would babysit as a way to make money. And then I also met an extremely, extremely wealthy Moroccan guy that was from California, but he also had a house in Israel. So he took good care of me too. And he was my first man. And but I was too scared to ever cross certain lines, But the first year was very, very, very intense. Very intense. On the same breath that, I get locked down for, breaking a rule for a month. When we'd be sitting at the Passover Seder, I'm a 16-year-old girl and the principal would let us all smoke cigarettes at the Passover Seder like it was nothing, So there was like this interesting dichotomy of like what was okay and what wasn't. And being neurodivergent, you kind of need clear-cut rules. You can't have vague spaces and gray areas. You need everything cut and dry. Like, why is it okay for us to sit and smoke cigarettes at 16, but it's not okay for me to pop Molly and try that out for the first time at a club, But I understand the difference now as a grown-up. I wasn't an angel either, I was searching, I was exploring, I was dying to breathe the free air in a sense.
Mhm.
And I wanted to experiment and I wanted to try everything that I had felt that I had missed out on. And I certainly did. But the one thing that I never, ever, ever did was men scared the living shit out of me. They really scared me. So I was glad that one thing that I have to praise my first boyfriend for is like he could sense that something happened to me. And he of course tried to not force himself, but yeah, he would back me up against the wall and scare the living shit out of me and force me like I had never seen a man's private part. And he'd just like whip it out and I'd like cover my face and he'd be like, look at it. And I wouldn't want to look at it, because I just didn't want to see the one-eyed monster. Luckily, I've healed a lot from that now, but luckily he can sniff out, like, I didn't want to hug him. I didn't want him to get too close to me. I would do crazy things like, I don't want to say that I would self-harm because I am an Aries and I am a sun worshiper, but like I would tan in the Israel sun. Like that is desert sun. It's stronger than Vegas sun. It's stronger than tropical sun. I would want to tan so bad because I never got to go to a beach and wear a bikini until I went to Israel. So Memphis doesn't have beaches. I remember getting the worst sun poisoning ever and fainting in the bathroom and being carried, waking up. They were putting Noxzema all over my body because I was so horrifically burnt. And that was a very weird phase that I went through, that this year is the first year that I finally stopped burning myself to the point where like I get blisters. It's a very odd self-harm thing that I do. Obviously never my face or my neck, being that I'm a licensed esthetician and, and a certified massage therapist. I always knew my face, you don't dare let that get exposed to the sun. But I love the tanning beds. I love heat. I'm always cold naturally. I can't regulate my body temperature. It's because I have 2 autoimmune diseases, so I can't regulate my body temperature. So I always crave heat. I love the warmth.
So you really experienced some extremes, held back on others for good reason. I could understand what was playing in the background of your mind with the traumas you had experienced. Now you have to go back as this, I guess we could call you a wild teen at this point.
Oh yeah.
So how did your parents accept you? Were they like, "Who are you? Who is this girl that is coming back from Israel?"
I came back to Lakewood because New York is a breed. I would run away to New York and stay in a garage and sleep in a garage just to get away from my family, by the way. Girl, wait till you hear this. I come back to New Jersey. I have a tongue ring. My ears are littered with earrings. I have a belly ring. And I remember even in Memphis when it was time for all of us to go back home, I didn't go home. And in Israel, everybody goes back home for Passover and Sukkot. I never went home. I wanted to stay. When I went back, that was brutal. That was brutal for me. I basically had to be 2 people. I had to be one person in their home. If I wanted to come into their home, I am not even allowed to walk around in pajamas in my home. I have to wear a robe that covers all of the same areas of my body. My brother is not allowed to see my knees. My brother is not allowed to see me not dressed a certain way. Going home was just straight torture, and I would just run to New York as much as I could. I would basically always be trying to run away to New York to be with my best friends. So,
Yeah.
that's what I would do. Sarah talked about how she had a wardrobe. Exact same thing. I would have this nice long sarong, but I didn't even bother faking the jeans. I'd have them underneath and peeking out. But it was my way of showing my mom, look, I respect you. I'm going to put the long sarong on and I'm going to cover myself up and then boom, pull it all off and go clubbing and go partying and dabbling in mind-altering fun and really, really enjoying. Oh my God, I love to dance. I love hip hop. I mean, I was in the South. Future, like the crunk era and all that was huge. Like there was no stopping me. I just wanted to get low and I wanted to shake it and I just wanted to go wild. I wanted to get in the cages. I wanted to be in the DJ booth. I just wanted to go wild. And when you drink, it would definitely help me get loose. But I do not touch alcohol because what would happen is I would get sloppy, and I don't like to be sloppy. I like to be a woman of class and a woman of and when I would hear the stories the next day, I'd be like, please tell me you're lying. I didn't do that. No way, no way. They're like, you did that. You absolutely did. I'm like, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. And then something really dangerous happened where I blacked out and I disappeared for 3 hours and they had to call police. They had a DJ calling my name and no one could find me. And this, by the grace of God, because I could have been kidnapped and murdered. What happened was after 3 hours, they found me blacked out on a couch and there was a group of girls guarding me. And when they tried to get to me, they blocked them to get to me. They were like, whoa, 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 who are you? They're like, we're watching over her. You don't have to come near her. And they had to explain like that girl's with us. We've been searching for her. They've been calling her name. Stuff like that. And also like when you drink, you also can get angry easily. And I didn't want to fight with people I loved. And for vanity reasons too. I mean, I'd wake up and my beautiful white backless dress would be covered in black. And it just, me and liquor don't mix. I'm more of somebody that enjoys plant-based remedies. it has a lot more medicinal value and helps me, while liquor does absolutely nothing but make me feel extremely sick and ashamed.
Yeah. Well, also just trying to figure out what a healthy limit is. I feel like it's hard to do that when you grow up in a high control group and you are just told abstain, abstain, abstain. It's a sin. Don't touch it. And then when you want to explore, you don't really know how to go about it or what's the safest way.
You go from one extreme and you have a reverse reaction, and you go to the
Yeah.
other extreme. Like, you do definitely have to find the balance. And
Yeah.
I have to say, like, that's like a lifelong journey to find that balance. Underprotected daughters become very overprotective mothers. And even like, like my friends would have to say to me, like, Chasya, you can take your eyes off of your kid. Like, go enjoy. Like, we're watching her. Like, I never take my eyes off of her. Like, I'm a real helicopter mom. They would have to like chide, and even my sister would be like, why do you always hold her? Why don't you ever put her down? And I would say, because one day she's going to be too big and I'm not going to be able to hold her. She's going to be too big. Like, why would I put her down?
Yeah.
And once she turned 2, she was like the size of a 5-year-old already. And best believe my little back that has cervical radiculopathy and cervical kyphosis can't lift her. So I'm glad I held her for those first 2 years. And we still co-sleep. She wants to be held when she's with me. Yeah, she needs to feel safe.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful that you have that relationship with her, that you are giving her that love and affection and attention and validation and all of that. And we're going to get more to that part of your story in the second episode.
Me having a voice and me having a platform, that he slapped a gag order on me. So, yeah, that should tell you everything you need to know. Because when someone's a good person, they have nothing to hide. But when somebody's terrified that the truth is going to come out, they're going to shut you up. So my constitutional rights have been taken from me, and my freedom of speech have been taken from me, because facts are not defamation. People don't realize that they need to be careful. You're going to get up on a platform and no Jewish man is going to let you throw them under the bus.
Okay,
They're going to shut all those ultra Orthodox women down quickly.
Jeez.
It happened to me. It's going to happen to them. Maybe I should wear a mask for this interview.
Oh no, it's a little late for that.
But I know. I figured, you know what? I have to, fear is a reaction and courage is a choice. And I kick fear in the fucking face.
Yeah.
Fuck fear. If it's going to come down to it, what is he going to sue me for?
Yeah.
You can't make a stone bleed water. You can't, you know what I mean?
Let's just end this episode with our Linda Listen moment, the sassy statement as the viral video with the toddler goes, or something more inspirational. It's up to you, whatever direction you want to go.
My Linda moment will be this. If you live in a life of fear and anxiety, which you're going to do to yourself, and I understand that it's also a chemical thing that we cannot control, because I have both. But what I learned is that when you allow it to take over, you're basically suffering twice. Because what's the point? What is the point of worrying and being in fear? If something happens, it's going to happen regardless. All the praying, all the fear, all the worrying that you're going to do, it's not going to change the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to change the outcome. So put on your brave, big girl panties and do what you need to do, what's best for you. That is my Linda moment. And it took me, it was probably until this year, for that to finally click.
Beautiful. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I can't wait for the second part.
Shalise, thank you so much. And if you want a good giggle, I almost converted to Mormonism. They almost got me. And I'm going to end it with this story, okay?
Wait, no. I want to start the next episode with that story. Okay, it's too good. Fine. So guys, you're going to have to wait for part 2. This is insane.
They stuck me in so well. When I tell you, they are good, the Mormons.
Well, this is a good cliffhanger then, guys. Stay tuned for part 2. It's going to be wild. We are going to get into The things that a lot of people, according to Chasya, are too afraid to talk about, which that's okay. No one is forced to talk about anything. We're going to talk about it here in part two. We're going to talk about the underground society of the Hasidic community, or the one that you were a part of, Chasya, talking about what men are secretly doing behind closed doors, the way that they're protecting predators. So much to get into.
We're going to also talk about how they're using gets, not giving gets to their wives and holding them hostages for sometimes over 11 years. We're going to talk about they have their own judges. They have their own courts. They have their own police. They're called shomrim. They have everything. We're going to talk about the murder of Levi Kletsky and how the Jewish police found the Jewish murderer faster than the New York police did. We're going to talk about all the underground, how rabbis will hire hitmen, stories about Hasidic boys that become victims because the rabbis order them to go burn down competitors' temples. We're going to get into the real nitty gritty dirt that they try to pretend doesn't exist. I know because I experienced
Oh, shit. It's
Yes.
about to get real here
Yes.
at Cults to Consciousness.
Yes. You might want to bring some fidget toys for that one.
So, a lot to go over clearly. This has been amazing. Do you have any final thoughts before we go?
I just want to say thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you so much for giving a voice to the voiceless, giving hope to the hopeless, and for letting us be seen. You are truly, as we're taught in Judaism, if you save one life, it's as if you saved the whole world. And I think you saved more than one life. So understand that you are considered someone that goes straight to heaven in our religion.
Oh, thank you. As an apostate, I appreciate that.
Your heaven is already there and waiting for you, and you're at the highest level.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel like a lot of people may have differing opinions based on the stuff we talk about here, but you know what? I'll take it. I'm going to take it. That was a very beautiful compliment. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Guys, if you're listening, the best thing that you can do is leave words of encouragement for Chasya here and thank her for coming on and sharing, because it is scary and there are ramifications. In the next episode, we're also going to talk about the ramifications that happened when she went on Soft White Underbelly and how that affected her and why she decided to come forward on this channel and continue to talk about the hard things. And of course, just leaving any type of comment or interacting with the post helps send this to more people so others can become more aware and compassionate as well. If you want to connect with Chasya on Instagram, her Instagram is @daughterchasya. We'll put that link in the description as well.
And if you have a fake looking account, I will not accept you. And also, I think it's also really important I have a GoFundMe so that I can hire lawyers so that me and my daughter can reunite and be safe. We can also slap that gag order off me.
Yes. If you want to support further, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/cults2consciousness. We have merch at cults2consciousness.com. And we also are going to Mexico. If you want to come with us to the Oaxacan coast to swim in waterfalls and watch little sea turtles get released into the ocean, and cooking classes and all that fun stuff. So link is in the description. We have a clips channel where you can watch shorter clips of our episodes, 8 to 10 minutes long. That's also in the description. If you like this video, definitely check out these two below. Hit that subscribe button and the bell if you want to be notified for Chasya's part 2. And until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well.